Right, we're now live.
Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Pyrenees Shire Council. Councillors will today deliberate and decide on a range of matters relevant to the work of council and its communities for the welfare of the people of the Pyrenees Shire. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this ordinary council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or make a submission will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of that live stream and recording. The chair and or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed appropriate. That may include where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. The live stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. The public is able to view the live stream via our website at www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the live stream, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum can be maintained, and where possible, a recording of the meeting will be published on council's website. Where a quorum cannot be maintained, the meeting will be adjourned until the issue is resolved for the meeting postponed to another time and date in accordance with council's governance rules. We acknowledge the people past and present of the Wadawurrung, Jar Jalwarong, Eastern Maar, Watchabolik, Jardwa, Jardwajali, Werrigai and Jabbergulk nations whose land and waters the Pyrenees Shire operates on. We pay our respects to the ancestors and elders and recognise and respect their customs, stewardship and continuing connection to country. No apologies. Is there any notice of disclosure by any councillors or officers in relation to any matters we'll discuss tonight? If one should arise and you think it is, can you please make sure you nominate? Before I go into the confirmation of the meetings, I welcome the gallery here who've come along to view and probably participate in our council meeting tonight. So thank you all for coming along. Item 6, confirmation of the previous meeting. Recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 16th of February 26 and the closed meeting of council held on 16th of February 26 is previously circulated to council be confirmed. Could I have someone move that, please? Thank you. Councillor Toll, seconded Councillor Kerr. All those in favour? Thank you. There was no business arising from the previous minutes on the 16th of February 2026. Public participation. Members of the community are encouraged to participate in public ordinary council meetings by asking questions or presenting a submission. This can be done by attending in person or by submitting in writing prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting online through council's website, by mail or hand delivered. If a question or submission is submitted in writing, this will be read by the chair during public participation, stating the person's name and township. Question time will be held first, followed by public submissions. 30 minutes is allowed for the total period of public participation. Time extensions may be allowed at the discretion of the chair, subject to the provisions of the governance rules. A person may ask a maximum of 2 questions at any one meeting. The chair will allocate a maximum of 5 minutes to each person who wishes to address council or ask questions. The chair, councillor or council officers to whom a question is referred may immediately answer the question or take the question on notice for answering at a later date. There will be no discussion or debate with public attendees. However, councillors may ask questions of the attendee for clarification. Do we have any questions from the gallery? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Young. I had to do this, unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, because I'm getting old. Like you, I've had a recent birthday. So, yeah.
Can we just state your name first, please? And yeah, sorry, really? For the public.
Trevor Davey from Waterloo.
Thank you.
I have I want to read something first and then ask the question. We've got, and I'll lean towards our CEO. He's got greater detail than me. We have approximately 8,000 people living in Pyrenees Shire. I believe. We have about 1,800 people living in Beaufort, and I think that's close to the figure. We're about, or approximately 3,433 square kilometres. It's a pretty long way to go anywhere. And we're very strongly an agricultural shire. I think that's about right. And yet we have no X-ray machine anywhere in the shire. Anybody that's injured has to go a hell of a distance to get somewhere. Now, I know this is not the responsibility of the council, but I think it'd be great if we could get some sort of advocacy around, I know, set up a GoFundMe page or something or anything to get, right now, someone in a bloke is in real trouble when they get a broken arm and they get a broken foot and an ankle. The agricultural accidents in Victoria at the moment are about 52% of all accidents. That's pretty high. And when you're down in Snake Valley and you're a long way from anywhere, it's very hard to get some sort of result. So my question is, I'm hoping the council, and I know Mr. Nolan knows what I'm talking about, which is wonderful. I'm hoping the council, we can get some together, some advocacy to get this moving, because I think it's going to be worse as the people get a lot older in the shire. So that's my first question.
I'm happy to respond to that. Would you like to respond to that, Mr. Nolan, please?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Davey, for raising this question. And we've talked previously about this issue. And since our discussion, I have actually taken the issue up with CEO at Beaufort Skipton Health Service to advise that there's some interest in this matter, and would it be beneficial for the health service to have an X-ray machine. The CEO raised a couple of relevant sort of matters in terms of what type of machine and what training would be needed for the operators to operate it, and would they have resources to be able to do that. So I think she was very interested in the fact that there was interest in the service and building a service. There may be a type of machine that might be suitable that could be used at a local level, but not necessarily the sort of X-ray machine that you might experience at a larger centre. Something that a nurse could operate, potentially a nurse X-ray plate, for example. But happy to facilitate those discussions and to support where possible. As it's not actually a council service, it's only something that we would be able to just sort of facilitate and assist in those. But that was the initial response that we received from the CEO, that it requires people to operate them, and it's not quite as straightforward as just here's the machine. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. You got a second question, Mr. Davey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Trevor Davey from Waterwood. And I'm prepared, by the way, before I go further, to start off with $2,000 donation from my company towards the X-ray machine. My next question is around the environment, obviously. And thank you, Councillor Keogh, for your support in Snake Valley and us providing the donations down there. They were amazing during that slashing period. So if you could thank them again, that'd be great. If you look at the environment right now, you're not seeing anything you've ever seen before, and it's never happened before. Now, anybody who's using any type of environmental talk should start with the real basics, and that is simple things like Councillor Toll and I had a discussion over the shifting of the earth from the China dam that they built, Three Gorges. I've worked on the Three Gorges dam 3 times. I'm going to assure you, if that breaks, China's not going to worry about military, they probably won't have one. But they're about to build a second project, which is bigger. So that's going to impact it again. So every single time the Earth's rotation changes, your season changes. So right here and now, you should be, and I think Mr. Thompson's here, yeah, Mr. Thompson's here, he would have experienced this in his farm all his life. The seasons are now different, as you would have also on your farm, Mr. Mayor. The thing is, when the seasons change, what's happening is everything's confused. It's not just, look at the crop problems we've got in Pyrenees Shire right now. You only have to look at the weed problems and the devastation going on with what's happening with the grasses that are dying off because they're not used to it. So the whole thing's changing. So my question is, if the council has any desire to look for a second slashing, I'd be very hesitant to do it at this stage. I'd be holding off as long as you possibly could, simply because you're going to have more changes, because El Nino and El Nino have both collided. So what we're seeing now is the most unusual weather that we've ever seen. So my question is, I hope the council, or wish the council would be careful not to do a second slash at this stage. So that's all.
So with you, Mr. Gowans, please. Thank you for your question, Mr. David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Davies, for your question and your insight into the changes that we've had in our seasons and the impacts that has on some of the activities we undertake, including roadside slashing, which is the last few years have proven to be difficult to get the timing right and to be able to achieve all we need to achieve as that curing cycle takes place. We attempt to do our best with the availability of contractors and getting the right timing, but you're absolutely right that you can't always get it correct, and sometimes it does mean we have to allow for some second slashing in the Shire, which prudently our budget does allow for a little bit of that, and we do that on some key places, as you might be aware, that especially where there might be a safety issue relating to intersections and the like. So, but take that on board. Yeah, we getting the timing right on that is difficult, and you're absolutely right. We do take a cautious approach and try to leave a little bit up our sleeves, to cope with a changing environment.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good.
Thank you, Mr. Davey. And your insight is interesting, and considering you work in the environment every single day, I'm sure that you've put a lot of thought and done a lot of investigation into what you've said today. So thank you for that. Is there any further questions from the gallery? No further questions. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on. Item 9.1, council activity reports. That's there. I take it that that is read. Offers a recommendation that council notes this report. Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor Phelan, seconded Councillor Ward. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 10, the Assembly of Councillors. I'll take that as being read. Offers a recommendation that the council notes this report. Can I have someone to move that, please? Councillor Toll, seconded Councillor Keogh. All those in favour? Thank you. Brings us to item 11. 11.1, Assets and Development, the Tanwood Avenue of Honour Restoration. Mr. Gowans, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide consideration to replant the Tanwood Avenue of Honour. Flowering gums were planted in the Tanwood Avenue of Honour in 2002 following the removal of some ageing and dead Monterey cypress tree. The flowering gums were severely impacted by heavy frosts in October 2024. In response to community concern, the potential for replacing these trees with more frost-tolerant species was investigated, and council sought input from the community on tree selection. The majority of respondents favoured replanting the avenue with an exotic species such as ash or oak, which would stand out from the backdrop of eucalypts and provide a strong avenue feel. Based on discussions with nurseries and horticulturists, either oak or ash trees would be suitable choices at the site if properly protected and nurtured when young and the soil is well prepared. Planting should take place in the May to October period. The cost for full delivery of this project, including purchase of trees, planting, tree staking and protection and watering for a period of 2 years, is estimated just over $30,000. Council's current budget for Avenue of Honour maintenance is $15,000. This fund is used for maintenance of all avenues of honour across the Shire and has effectively been fully utilised this year. Additional budget allocation would be required to restore the Tanwood Avenue of Honour. Replanting the degraded trees in the Tanwood Avenue of Honour would improve the amenity and provide a long-lasting asset for the local community. And therefore, it's the officer recommendation that council support the development of a plan to replace the existing trees at the Tanwood Avenue of Honour with oak or ash trees, and that council resolve that funding to complete the project be put forward as a budget bid for 2026-27 for council's consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors, we have a recommendation here. Would someone like to move that? Moved councillor Wardle, and someone like to second it?
No.
Seconded.
Making maybe a change to them, speak
You
to
want
them.
You want to move an alternative?
Well, you've got a motion that's been moved, so if you get a seconder, you've got to discuss that. Just see if there's a seconder first, and if there's no.
Yes.
Or just
seconder,
add to it, or just a slight,
So you want to make a alteration?
if I could please,
Would
Mr
someone
Mayor.
like to second that?
Just maybe if Simon outlines what the alteration
What's your-
is. Yeah.
Right, okay. Righto, thank you, Mr Gow, for your report on there. Look,
Say what the motion.
I'd like to move something else to that motion. I highly recommend we replant the trees and get suitable trees. I would like to suggest that we could get a community group or groups to partake in that. We know they're struggling for some money at the moment. $32,000 would be a great help to the Moonah Belt community or some group in Avoca. $15,000 to water them. It's not a very skilled process. And that also, part of that, if we could split it down into some components, I think it would greatly help our communities that are struggling, and we could possibly get some communities
We just need
together.
Simon to articulate what his amended motion is.
The amended motion would be to get some community groups to participate and get the funding.
So that would be as an item 3 on that.
Yes.
Someone like to second that?
Well, is the mover of the motion happy for the amendment?
Happy for the amendment?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the mover and a seconder.
Seconder.
Yep.
Yep. Would you like to talk further on that, councillor Todd?
Like a jack in the box. Yeah, I just think it would really help our struggling communities that are all, being involved in the local community groups, always struggling for money. Now, if we could get $7,500 per annum into a local group, it would be a fantastic result, and it would free up our council officers to do something else.
Thank you. Councillor Wardle, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually interesting because I was driving through there the other day, as I do quite often, and I'm always drawn to the trees and the sad state, and to hear that we're actually looking at fixing this is really, really a good thing. And I do agree that if we can include community groups in this and make it a project for all, but they can benefit from it in more ways than one, is a fantastic idea. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak on that? Councillor Field?
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, I also drive through that patch often, and it would be lovely to see more growth there and trees which can actually survive drought, can survive frost. One of the things I wanted to comment on before I get to the amended motion was, and it's related to the point that Councillor Toll made. I really was pleased to see the engagement with the community on the type of plants, the type of trees which might be planted as an alternative. And reading through some of the responses from the community, it's evident that there is so much intelligence and wisdom on the sort of trees which will survive frost and drought, and the sort of preparation to the soil that's required. So it did actually get me thinking along similar lines to what you've the motion that you've put forward, Councillor Toll. How do we tap into that great knowledge and expertise in the community? I had to say I was going down perhaps a less generous path to suggest that maybe some of the community members could, for example, volunteer to do some of the watering. But I think the premise of what you've said, that this money actually go to the community who are local, they're there, they've got all the knowledge, so many of them clearly through those responses. They know what's required to really get these plants to thrive. And I think it's particularly important that we ensure that we get it right, because we don't want to be coming back again in a year's time and finding that plants have failed again. So the more we can tap into the sort of expertise and particularly the expertise that resides in the community, the better. Thank you.
Yep.
Just like to mention one further thing. What brought my attention to this when I was reading the agenda is we're personally doing a development at Learmonth, and Ballarat City Council wanted 25,000 to water the trees there for a 2-year period. We've given the local Lions Club a nice little donation, and they're saving us money and it's making them money. So it can work.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak on that? I just got a couple of questions, Mr. Gowns, please. Are you aware how many avenues we have in the Shire?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did bring a report on that not long ago. It's in the order of about 20, but I haven't got the exact number, but there is, often some tree planting associated with some of the fixed memorial structures as well. So there are some avenues that are just pure avenues, and there's others that have war memorials associated with them. Some of the avenues across the Shire are not maintained and have not been maintained for a long period of time, and one or two that come to mind are the Waterloo Avenue of Honour and the Glenpatrick Avenue of Honour. It's very difficult to even understand which trees form part of that. So there are differences. We recognise that there's a historic element to them, but there's also avenues that we have a higher level of maintenance, and again, that was presented in a report not that long ago to council.
Thank you, Mr. Gowan. Just one further question, unless I've missed it in the body of the narrative. How many trees are we talking about at Tamwood, roughly?
Yes. From memory, so this might not be exactly right. It's in the order of 20 to 30.
22.
22. There you go. So it's in the right range. So yeah, it's not that many, but the area has been prepared for the avenue because prior to that planting, the area had fallen into a state of disrepair, and it was at the insistence of the community and the drive of the community to renew that avenue.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Gowans. Sorry for putting you on the spot twice in a row. I think the concept that's been raised is really good, and the added concept by Councillor Toll is fantastic, involving the community in it, and it really gives them some ownership of these types of things. And their avenues of honour are quite sentimental to a lot of people, and rightly so they should be. And I note that this one was established in 1924, so it's just over 100 years old, so that's significant in itself. So it's really good to see this work being done, and we get the right trees. They should be there for a very long time into the future, so if they're maintained properly. So we have an amended recommendation there.
Yep. So 3-point recommendation.
The 3-point recommendation. Is everyone, councillors, clear on what the recommendation is? Yep. All those in favour? Thank you. Now this brings us to 11.1.2, Burnbank Creek Lexington flood mitigation works. Mr. Gowans, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the removal of regrowth vegetation from Burnbank Creek in Lexington. In August 2025, Council resolved to support the removal of all non-native and potentially removal of native regrowth vegetation from the Burnbank Creek where required on an annual basis within the limits of available funding or budget, and seeks appropriate permissions for the removal of regrowth vegetation and other creek obstructions. This action was identified in the Lexington Flood Mitigation Plan. An engagement has been undertaken with relevant authorities and the local land care network, and a works on waterway permit has been obtained from the North Central Catchment Management Authority. The scope of the project includes the removal of woody weeds and regrowth in a 200-metre long section of Burnbank Creek. The project requires funding for initial works and ongoing monitoring and potentially follow-up works as required on an annual basis. No funding source for the project has yet been secured. The implementation of the proposed works requires funding of initially $20,000, and options for funding the project through external sources are still being sought. Proposed flood mitigation works in Burnbank Creek Leaston are an important component in Council's flood mitigation strategy and represent the opportunity to improve the amenity and biodiversity of the township. And the officer recommendations that Council notes the report and the Council supports the amount of $20,000 to be put forward as a budget bid for 2026-27 for Council's consideration in the absence of suitable external funding being secured.
Thank you, Mr. Gown. Council, we've got a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Moved Councillor Phelan, seconded Councillor Keogh. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Phelan?
Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to see that this work is going ahead. I know following the community consultation on flood mitigation options, the community's priority was on these very practical measures. How do we, deal with all of the debris and the new growth that's coming up in the creek that's contributing to flood risk? So really pleased to say again that that intelligence in the community, that understanding of what will actually work in their local communities is being acted on. It would be, I think, really good to put on our forward agenda for every annual budget to see that there is some maintenance work done, because we know the longer the growth is left, the more costly it is to clean that debris. And then, we may end up having to go down a different path with the catchment authority or other authorities. So really pleased to see that and happy to support it. Also very happy to see external sources of funding, if that's possible.
Councillor Keogh.
Sorry, my mic's not. Just again to say thank you that we are moving on this, because this is a really key part of the cleanup project, and being able to maintain that the community again have spoken out really strongly about. So just wanted to second that.
Any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Toll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gowan, so this $20,000, is that to get the job done?
Correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is initial works that have been identified to remove the woody growth and both the exotic trees and the rewilded native vegetation, but we have got permits in place to be able to do that work.
Thank you, Mr. Gans. It seems bizarre that we've spent nearly $300,000 doing a feasibility study for a $20,000 job. But let's hope it fixes the problem slightly and we can maintain it, as you said, and we can move forward and we reduce our problems in Mexton. The Lexton locals will be very happy.
Any other councillors wishing to speak? Yeah, I think I'm just really keen to make sure we have that continued advocacy and negotiations with the relevant authorities for funding. It's admirable that we do these works on behalf of the community. We listen to the community, but many times council finds itself doing work and works that are probably attributable to other agencies, but nonetheless, it's important work and it needs to be done before the wet season comes in. So, councillors, you have a recommendation here. All those in favour? Thank you. 11.1.3, links across the divide biodiversity project. Mr. Gowans, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council endorsement for participation in the Regional Links Across the Divide study and to recognise its role in strengthening environmental outcomes across central Victoria. Pyrenees Shire has been invited by the City of Ballarat to partner with neighbouring councils on a regional biolink study. Council previously resolved to provide in-principle support for the study at an ordinary meeting of council in August 2024. The study applies a multi-species approach to identify key wildlife corridors across the central Victorian uplands, including the southern and central western parts of the Pyrenees Shire. Species selected for analysis represent a range of ecological functions and habitat needs and include the agile antechinus, the echidna, koala, brush-tailed phascogale, a great striped thrush, white-eared honeyeater, black rock skink, blotched black blue tongue, and white-lipped snake, and many of which occur in the Pyrenees Shire. Native forests and woodlands across central Victorian uplands are increasingly fragmented, limiting wildlife movement. Council has committed to improve the biodiversity values of Pyrenees Shire for future generations through its Biodiversity Action Plan of 2016. Participation in the project offers several benefits to Pyrenees Shire, including identification of priority areas for habitat protection and restoration diversity, support for community-led and landholder-driven conservation efforts, delivery of a practical outputs and clear implementation guidance, strengthen regional collaboration between councils, agencies and traditional owners, and alignment with state and national biodiversity strategies. The Links Across the Divide project would enhance biodiversity outcomes of the region in line with the Pyrenees Shire's commitment to preserve, promote and enjoy the natural environment. And therefore, it's the Office's recommendation that Council provide $10,000 in the 2026-27 budget as a contribution towards the Links Across the Divide project.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors have a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Wardlaw, and we've got a seconder, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Wardlaw, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anything to do with the environment matters to me, especially, you know, the animals, and see that little group of, you know, koalas, echidnas, snakes, blue tongues, skinks. And, you know, it really does matter, and we've got to keep these environments safe so that we don't lose these animals going forward. I mean, we know the koalas are struggling a bit everywhere, and we just don't want to lose them. So whatever it takes, I think it's a great thing that we put something towards it and at least try to help along the way.
Councillor Phelan. Any other councillors wishing to speak to that? I think the other thing that we'll provide is a valuable information and valuable data will be gathered along the way, which, you know, we just can't, sometimes it's hard to put a value on that. And I think for $10,000, we'll get a lot of information that'll be very, very valuable to us in future to use. So I think it's very worthwhile. All those councillors in favour? Thank you. 11.1.4 in-house curbside waste collection service business case. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would just point to councillors down the gallery that there was an updated report, which I think is has been included in the agenda today. So I'll be referring to that rather than the original agenda. The purpose of this report is for council to consider a business case for an in-house internally operated curbside bin collection service. The current curbside bins collection service provides coverage to just over 4,000 properties. The service is delivered under contract by a private company that supplies collection vehicles, drivers, scheduling, and manages the day-to-day operations and associated costs. The contracted service is valued at $700,000 per year, equating to about $173 of the current waste charge per property. A business case for an in-house curbside bin collection service has been prepared due to, at the October 2025 council meeting, council resolved to undertake a review and prepare a business case for the potential implementation of an internally operated curbside bin collection service, and also as part of council's ongoing review of continuous improvement processes for waste and recycling services to ensure that best value service is delivered to residents. The table in the report includes the high-level business case information. And there's a number of assumptions associated with that that are in the detailed business case. There are considerable financial, operational and industrial risks to consider with an internally operated curbside bin collection services. A comparison is listed in the table in the report. And there is some benefits of an in-house service, and there are some risks associated with it, which are detailed there in the report. It's also worth noting that if council resolved to make an internal bid to the public tender process, council would need to engage a probity officer to ensure that the process remains competitive and transparent, and this would come at a cost of about $25,000. An internally operated curbside bin collection service might be financially viable in the future, but comes with financial, operational and industrial risks that need to be considered. The current contracted curbside bin collection service has also performed generally well at a cost-effective rate over the past 5 years and is structured to allow a 1-year extension to the contract. A 1-year extension has been offered to council's current contracted continuous service until the 30th of June 2027. Preparation for a new contract starting on the 1st of July 2027 will be undertaken later this year. And it's the officer recommendation that council notes the current 1-year extension to the existing contract for curbside bin collections up to the 30th of June 2027, and that council undertakes an internal estimate for in-house delivery of the curbside bin collection service for comparison purposes when council invites public tenders for a new contract starting on the 1st of July 2027.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors, we have a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Phelan, we've got a seconder. Councillor Wardlaw, Councillor Phelan, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, to briefly state, I don't think that in council we want to be taking on that additional risk and responsibility and maintenance of assets for the curbside bin collection. And I do note through surveys with the local members of the community that they have a very high level of satisfaction with the current service. I think we should keep that as is. Thank you. Very happy to support the keeping as.
Councillor Wardlaw. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Keogh.
Oh, sorry, just to second that. And we know financially that's a far better decision to stay with what we've got now. So we just want to be prudent with our ratepayers' money.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. Councillor Toll, you wish to come on?
I'll go against everyone here and think say that I think we should keep continuing to explore our own curbside collection. To be scared off by the threat of an EBA confrontation and not picking up bins. If the local contractor goes through an EBA as well, they could have the same problem. I think a business that grows itself and buys its own equipment and not reliant on outside sources is a stronger one than one that's relying on external contractors. We're always pushing for economic development. Now, it says in the report here that we could employ an extra 4 or 5 people. That's fantastic. Maybe we could employ some local people and create some jobs and keep the money in town being spent locally rather than companies based out of Melbourne or Sydney, wherever the current contractor comes from. If it comes at an extra cost, well, we might be able to provide a better business. We might be able to also outsource it, use it for festivals, use it for other bits and pieces as well around the community. But I think we've got to build our asset base. We've got to build our business as such. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Toll. It's interesting discussion, and it's a lot of further discussion that probably no doubt will be had. It's just that the transition to try and do it yourself, or I don't disagree with what you say, Councillor Toll, but that's a big step, and I think that would take some time to move towards that. I don't think we could do that in a short time, and I think just in the interim, I think we need to stick with what we got. And the other thing is, if we haven't got the resources, we haven't got the equipment at this stage, and we're talking about financial sustainability, have we got the money to go and do that, to follow that other pathway? So I'm not sure that we have at this point in time, but it's certainly something that we need to reconsider and revisit whenever we need to. So Yes, councillor Todd.
I'd just like to make one more point. Says the contract's roughly 700,000. I think looking in the financial report, I think we, in our rates and management, whatever, I think the latest financials show we bring in roughly 2.4 or 2.5 million dollars. Would that be correct, Mr. Gowns?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Tall, you might be referring to the total cost of waste for the Shire, which is made up of three key elements, this being one of them. The other one is the operation of our transfer stations, which is a similar amount. And the other one is the waste to landfill costs. So all those three main elements combined take the waste contract to well over $2 million. So this is one very clear element of the waste management process, but you're right, the waste costs are more than that, and that's why our waste charges are between $500 and $600 per property at this point in time.
Through you, Mr. I think the transfer station costs about 500,000 or something to run the transfer stations and whatever. That takes us up to about 1.4 or something. So I think if there was a shortfall, we would be able to find that money and, as I said, provide some local employment.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to make any other comment? No, thank you. All good conversation, really good conversation that needs to be continued. All those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That takes us to 11.1.5, building renewal determination for 25-26 budget year. Mr. Gowns, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider the progression of the following projects for building renewal in the 2025-26 budgetary year. And the two projects are the refurbishment of the toilet block and change rooms at the Lantern Hall and Caravan Park, and the refurbishment of the public toilets and hall toilets at Snake Valley Hall. Council allocates funding for building renewal projects, and which is informed by Council's 10-year asset plan. Council has previously allocated $250,000 per year within its forward budgets for building renewal. The two projects were identified for this current year's budget and have progressed through the design and investigation phases. Both projects are important facilities that provide community amenities and serve key functions. Each project is normally estimated to cost up to $100,000. Due to the financial environment Council is currently operating in, Council officers have undertaken a review of capital projects that have not yet commenced. As both nominated projects are yet to commence, Council has the opportunity to consider whether to proceed with both projects as planned in the 2025-26 financial year, prioritise one project to commence this financial year and defer the other one, or delay both projects until next financial year. Deferral of one or both projects could provide short-term financial flexibility. However, this may result in further asset deterioration, increased future renewal costs, or service limitations for the communities these assets serve. Asset renewal is an important activity to ensure assets are fit for purpose and meet community expectations. Prioritisation of asset renewal should encompass current asset conditions, community use, and financial ability to fund required works. It's the officer recommendation that Council prioritise an asset to commence renewal utilising funds from the 2025-26 building renewal budget. So I'm leaving up to Council to prioritise between those two projects, if that's what you.
I'd like to move, I think both projects, well, I can speak for the Snake Valley one, but I'm assuming Lanesborough is in a similar situation. Ours is, well, I'll speak to other names, so I'd like to put both forward.
Yep.
Thanks, move that motion,
Yep.
both projects.
A second.
You have the second, oh no, who's second?
You've got a second for both.
The alternative is that we arm wrestle.
No,
So
well.
So we've got to
definitely
that we do.
yes.
They're both-
Both, yeah.
Is there a second?
Have we got a second? The motion
I'm
is
happy to go both, but I definitely want Snake Valley.
so that the motion is that we take both projects on. So
Yeah.
that's moved. Have we got a seconder?
And I'll second it, but I want to speak to it first.
Oh,
We've got a seconder, so the
Yeah.
mover can then speak to the
You-
motion.
you get
and
to
then the
speak,
seconder
yeah.
can speak.
I'm happy to back both only because I know the longer we leave these, the cost just absolutely rises exponentially. Snake Valley, though, is our only set of toilets. We have a huge amount of people that move through that area. We had another group asking for another set of toilets at the rec reserve, which are deemed almost, they block up all the time. They almost need redoing. And they're the only other option, which is actually further away from the main area anyway and won't be an option very soon. These ones we've had multiple times where we've had to go clear them and we've had issues with them. And being such a hub and one of our next biggest hubs, apart from both in Avoca, it's an incredibly important facility to renew. Also, sorry, we also have the play group that uses that area. We have regular craft groups that use that hall. And there's a numerous amount of people. There's exercise groups, there's functions that are held in. If we're asking people to pay bonds and to hire this hall, we need to be able to have the facilities to look after it. We've had a number of voluntary people look after those toilets because they know how important that asset is. I do know we pay locals to look after them as well, which is part of a job that we give to locals there as well. Again, echoing what Councillor Toll's saying, in that we get a lot of buy-in, but they really are the only public access toilets and for quite a while around, which I think would be similar to Landsborough. So I'll allow Councillor Phelan to speak to that, but absolutely advocating for Snake Valley. But I think both assets are probably incredibly important. They're functional ones that are really important for our communities, both ends of the Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Toll.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My first question would be, who owns the asset? Is it Shire owned or Deaker?
Through you, Mr Mayor, definitively for both of those assets, they are council owned and managed.
Thank you, Mr Gowns. That answers that one. If we place so much importance on our asset renewal, if we've got $50 million, why do we allocate $250,000 a year? I mean, that's only 0.5%. It's not much.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you, Councillor Toll, for your question. Really, really valid observation. And I think building renewal works is something that we could spend a lot more money on, but obviously it has a limitation on how much our capital budget allows. We've been making do with the money that we've got and trying to prioritise asset renewal based on the financial position we find ourselves in. There is one particular thing with buildings, though, in a local government setting that's worth noting, that when large replacements occur, they're often only done with external funding from either the state or federal government. So we're not fully funding our renewal internally. We're also relying on additional grant funding for large-scale renewal projects. So you're right to suggest that it's not enough for the assets class that we have there, but we're prioritising it where the needs exist, and that we're utilising other sources of funds for large-scale renewal projects.
Well, thank you, Mr Gowns. I'm in one of my moods tonight. Sorry, everyone.
You can see that.
Been in the car too long today.
Going to be fit.
It's giving my knees a good workout. I note with interest, I fully support both projects. I fully support they're both brick buildings. What I can't come to grips with is 100,000 for each one. Warborough Football Club kindly got refurbishment of the shower blocks, and we're talking about 4 toilets and a bit of tiling in each one. Warborough's one was very similar and cost $30,000. I know costs have gone up, but I don't think they've gone up $70,000 per block. Hang on, Mr. Brown. I would like to see us go ahead with these, but get it fully quoted first. And I'd also like to see some clauses in the contracts that are an attachment here, penalties for late finishing and shoddy work. Recalling what we had to do at Warborough and replace tiles and plumbing and get the job compliant at the end. Also draws me to a point where I think if we're talking about spending $200,000 to replace 8 toilets and a bit of tiling, I'll get back to my earlier point, surely we could employ a builder and an apprentice that could possibly do that. And then maybe fix up a few other things around the town as well. So I think that's something we've got to explore down the track, but fully support getting both done, seeing that we own them, and just take those other points on notice, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to take those points on notice and also provide the reassurance that that would be an absolute maximum budget. Our intent would be to make sure that we're getting best value for the dollars, because whatever unspent funds aren't there go back into future renewal projects.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Any other councillors wish to talk?
Yeah,
Councillor
just
Phelan?
to add, and thank you for the alternate motion, councillor Keogh. I was feeling that it was slightly unkind of the Shire to force us to choose in the council meeting, so no, very good alternate motion. And I really do again support councillor Toll's approach that maybe we can look for some cost reductions by getting both done and by drawing on some local skilled labour to be able to fix these assets. I note that at the Landsborough facility, there is also a laundry area and exposed electrical box. So there is maybe some additional work, but I've really noticed the contrast down at the Landsborough caravan park, which is set in the most stunning setting on the creek, where people have beautiful walks, and we charge people, of course, to use the caravan park. And I'm sure that the people who pay for the privilege of staying in that beautiful location step into the toilet and shower block with some trepidation, because it's, yes, very unsightly. So if we can improve those facilities, it would very much add to the experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? I think it's really important. Oh, that's really good conversation. I think we need to continually reassess how we have done things in the past and how we do things now, about for a cost saving perspective on it, no matter what we do, because money's thin on the ground. And we've had this discussion many times. We'd like to put much more money into our asset renewal or maintenance. That'd be excellent, but to do that we have to take it from somewhere else. So something else suffers if we want to make something else better, because we just simply haven't got that funding stream coming into us, and we rely heavily on external money. So that's just a fact of life, and we have to deal with that. It's not pleasant, but we just have to face some realities. And I think what else is important, I really embrace these two projects, because we've heard a number of times and we've said a number of times, we don't want those smaller towns to be forgotten. And so it's such an important thing, and to realise that we are thinking of them and we are prepared to spend money on them. So it's a couple of really important projects. I think will make a massive difference to those towns. So all those in favour? Thank you. 11.1.6, town entrance signage. Again, Mr. Gowans, thank you.
This report is presented to inform councillors of existing township entrance signage and infrastructure, and to seek guidance regarding future prioritisation of improvements to entrance signage. Council has a mix of town and locality entrance signage that incorporates substantive stone entrance signs as key entrance points for more established townships, and some basic pole-mounted signs for smaller localities. The 26 stone township entrance signs were constructed in 2007 with some state government funding. In 2014, solar lights were installed to illuminate 15 of these. The balance of the stone entrances were equipped with solar lights in 2018-19. Unfortunately, the majority of solar lights installed during this period failed or became unreliable due to water ingress to wiring associated with ground installation, battery failure, poor access to sunlight for recharge, and luminaire failure. Council's asset department have had the solar lighting replaced in 5 locations as a consequence of these failures. Replacement lighting has pole-mounted solar lights. The streetlight luminaires integrate the solar panel, the battery and the luminaire into a product that is more reliable, more waterproof, and that has better solar access. A further benefit is that they are not vulnerable to damage associated with mowing or rock impact from passing vehicles. Council has not directly allocated a budget for ongoing renewal of solar lighting, with 2 localities still requiring upgrade. And they include the Beaufort and Snake Valley localities, and there's multiple town entrance signage at these localities. In addition to the stone entrance signage, a number of small communities have pole-mounted placard signage. In relation to the solar lights to replace them, you're looking at just over $5,000 per locality. So there's still, with Beaufort and Snake Valley, there's approximately 7 locations in those 2 townships that would require future lighting. However, installing the lower level signage, not in some of our other localities, is between $500 and $1,000 per location for the other type of signage. And it does provide benefits to communities through township recognition and wayfinding. And some of those have been installed in the last 6 months in the localities of Natyallik and Homebush. Council maintains a range of township entrance signs that contributes to community identity and visitor experience. The reliability issues of the existing solar lighting installed at the stone entrance signs could be mitigated with the staged replacement of pole-mounted integrated solar lighting. The expansion of placard sign style signage for smaller localities presents an opportunity for council to improve wayfinding across the Shire. And therefore, it's the officer recommendation that council notes its report, that council supports the upgrading of solar lighting in locations where the current lighting is not functional, utilising unallocated funds from existing budgets that relate to township maintenance, and that council considers making an allowance for signage and lighting upgrades in the 2026-27 council budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Gowan. Councillors, you've got a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Move, Councillor Field, seconded Councillor Keogh. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Field? Councillor Keogh? Any councillors wish to speak to that? I think the money seems, it is what it is, I know, but I think there's a really high expectation from the townships that are affected that they would have those illuminated, and the infrastructure is already there, so we make sure we need it illuminated, and it's just a cost I think we're just going to have to accept. So all those in favour? Thank you. 11.1.7 Emergency Tree Works Post Stratham Yellow Waipora Fire Event. Mr. Gowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on emergency tree works and the financial implications of continuing to remove hazardous trees in the wake of the Stratham Yarra fire event in January this year. Trees on roadside reserves were impacted by the fire. An experienced arborist was engaged to assess the tree condition and the risks on affected roadsides. 17 roads totalling approximately 40 kilometres were inspected. Of these, on these roads, there was approximately 4,400 roadside trees impacted by the fire. 1,294 of these trees were deemed as presenting a heightened risk level of risk to road safety. 69 were assessed as high priority and 1,217 were assessed as moderate priority. In all cases, the recommended works are to remove the trees. High priority trees are recommended for removal within 12 months. The time frame for recommended works for the moderate priority trees, based on this arborist, is 18 months. Council has proceeded to remove the high priority trees with these works and has completed these initial 69 trees. Based on discussions with Victorian Disaster Recovery funding arrangements, assessors, trees in the high priority category are likely to be eligible for funding. The eligibility of moderate priority trees is less certain because of the 18-month time frame for removal specified by the arborist. For works to be considered eligible as emergency works, they need to pose an immediate risk to the essential public assets. A final determination can only be made when the claims are submitted. The challenge facing council is that hazardous trees identified in the arborist report pose a risk to the road users and community safety in the next 18 months and beyond. A potential path forward is to undertake removal of a group of the moderate priority trees and seek to fast track the claim to gauge the likelihood of eligibility of DRFA funding before proceeding with further works. Trees in the moderate risk category may also be eligible for funding under the Council Support Fund. But it should be noted that there are many other competing interests in terms of allocation of the Council Support Fund. The removal of moderate priority tree, hazardous trees, is estimated to cost between $750,000 and $1 million. A further risk is that emergency tree works need to be completed by 30th of June this year in order to be eligible for claiming under the DRFA funding requirements. Fire-affected trees pose both an immediate and ongoing risk to road users. Tree removal works are a priority for ensuring community safety. Therefore, it's the officer's recommendation that Council supports the removal of fire-impacted roadside trees that pose a risk to road users, and that Council supports the adoption of a step-by-step approach which seeks to fast-track DRFA claims and minimise exposure to financial risk in the absence of clear funding commitment from external agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Gowns. And a recommendation there, Councillor
Can I
Cowell.
add a third point?
You'd like
Do you
to,
want to move it then?
do you want to move a motion?
Yeah, if I could add a third point. Up again. I'd like to move a motion that the possibility, if we're looking at spending $750,000 to $1 million, that we buy an excavator ourselves and employ a staff member to do it. At the end of our tree removal, we'll have an excavator that we could go and dig the Lexington Creek out and save $20,000 over there.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Just
Is
to,
there a seconder?
Have you got a second? We got a seconder for that motion?
I would, but I'm probably waiting on clarification on what.
It's just a note of clarification that we can only potentially get DFA funds, not for the purchase of equipment, and we cannot get them for use of our own staff. So there would be no opportunity for eligibility under the DRFA claim for purchase of equipment or using own staff.
Thanks for that clarification, Mr. Gowns.
Seems ridiculous.
So just ask
You
for a
better
seconder.
Have we got a seconder for that?
Better withdraw the motion then,
Okay,
Jim, if
well,
we're not
motion
allowed.
lapse, so.
Yeah.
Motion slaps, yeah.
Actually, if I can second the original or move the original motion, only because of that point. If we need it done as quickly as
Have
possible.
we got a second?
Hang on,
Oh,
I'll just
sorry.
ask Mr. Gowns a question. Mr. Gowns, if we just had our staff go over and do it, we're not allowed to claim funds. We've got to get an external contractor in, do we?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Thank you. Good to have that clarified, actually.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
Have we
I'm
got,
happy to
Can
move it
I
or second it. Do you want to
move an alternate motion, which is just for an additional point, that a third recommendation is that the gap between the works required and what gets funded or supported through state government and the time frame that the works need to be completed by becomes part of our advocacy to state government. We've got a whole list of points on which we want to advocate, and this is just another example of where the funding that we're getting from state government, or in other cases from federal government, does not meet the community expectations, safety requirements, and the timeframes are just really unreasonable. I mean, we don't have $1 million to be doing the works to then find out if we can actually get reimbursed. And there is danger to the community. Sorry, I know this is, it's a long motion. I would also like to know who's liable if damage is caused by one of these moderate, trees classified as moderate in the prioritisation. Who's liable if there is damage?
So is it the question?
yeah, Mr. Gowns?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. It's a really, really good question because that's effectively the Arborist report, which was an attachment to this report. It clearly shows, as the road authority, we hold some liability to road users. So council would be taking on some risk by not undertaking the removal work. There is some precedent to that, that we do have trees on roadsides that have been fire affected in other locations that have been identified as a potential risk to road users. So, you know, there is some precedent to it, but from a road user point of view and from a liability point of view, council does wear liability if those trees were to be the causal effect of an accident on the road.
You got a question?
Sorry,
We
we've
still
got a
haven't-
motion. We've got a motion, the first 2 points plus a third point, which.
And I'm happy to second that one.
So you second that motion? Yep.
Yeah,
No, we
thank
should
you.
keep going.
Councillor Tom?
Can we add another point to the motion that we advocate that we can start to do some work in-house? That we're allowed to buy our equipment and do it, because that just seems totally ridiculous. I mean, that works out at $850 a tree. Good operator will knock down 50 or 60 in a day.
So if the member is satisfied with the fourth dot point being added.
You happy with that?
As
To be
part of
added to
our
the advocacy?
Yeah, but we would need reassurance that we will get reimbursed for that. So it's a broadening of the guidelines. That's part of the advocacy.
Yeah, okay, so a fourth dot point that includes that piece of advocacy, and is the seconder happy with that?
I think so, but are you meaning more for future projects?
So, I mean, we have a fire
Word
every
is
2 years.
future projects, yeah.
It's not their first rodeo.
Yep, happy then.
So just a point of clarification, so councillor
Is
clear
there-
about what's actually been moved. So at this point in time, we've got a mover that's moved the first two points that are within the agenda and the officer's recommendation, with a third point that the gap between the cost of the work's been undertaken and what's been funded, and that the time that it takes to become reimbursed or to get advice about being reimbursed, both form part of our advocacy into the future around natural disaster claims.
And sorry, and should have added the scope of what's deemed kind of high priority, medium priority, because clearly there's still risk with the medium priority.
Yep, okay, so what's the scope of the eligibility in respect of what is reimbursed forms part of our advocacy. And then a fourth dot point that that we advocate to be able to do works in-house as part of the guidelines around future emergency activities. So the four points that we've got a mover and the seconder.
Yeah, we're clear, all clear on that, councillors? Thanks. Mr. Gowan?
Sorry, just a comment in relation to the cost, just for clarification purposes. A fair bit of the cost is actually related to traffic management, because these trees are likely to fall on the road. There's actually a fair bit of cost associated with traffic management, not just the pushing the tree over.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gowan. That's
And I imagine floating machinery everywhere.
yeah. So any other councillors wish to speak on that?
Sorry, may I just, so I do, I think that's so important, as long as that our recommendations and what we move with can get that done as soon as possible for the safety of everyone down there. And also, I think just for that, supporting the community overall, I think on a mental health level, if we can see that we're cleared that, we've made it as safe as possible, that can happen as a result of this is really important, as well as those other elements. I totally agree with those too. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors wish to speak on that? I think they're really good additions to the recommendation, very practical reality, and that's a reality that we face, those additional recommendations, so thank you for that. I just think it's important to say the allocation of funds that we get in most cases, especially for disasters, is manifestly inadequate in amount and has such stringent guidelines. It becomes impractical in the application, and we've got some funding there. We can't use it because the guidelines are so stringent and so narrow. You just can't use it for other stuff because we get audited by it. And if we dare use the money for something we shouldn't, I'd hate to think what the consequences are. And I think what that shows is the clear disconnect between the government's understanding of what's happening on the ground and what the reality is that the councils face, and that disconnect leads to this inadequate funding and the stringent guidelines that are not practical to use, and it creates massive headaches for the council and trying to navigate their way through to make that funding, one, fit for purpose, and two, to stretch out to what we needed to stretch out to. As I said, it's manifestly inadequate, and that's something that we'll certainly be strongly advocating for. And I think we've got countless examples, not just of this recent fire, but all the other disasters that we've faced over the last 5 to 7 years, which is a fair few. So we've got some pretty good case studies there where the money's just not there, and it should be there, and everyone suffers, and particularly the community. It's not acceptable. So thank you. We have that new recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you. 11.2.1 Corporate Community Services, NP 51 Walker Street, Avoca. Ms. Erdity, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to finalise the naming process for an unnamed road in Avoca between Davey Street and Kingston Street. The naming process commenced at the ordinary meeting of council on the 21st of July 2025 with the proposed name of Rosemary Way, which was denied by Geographic Names Victoria. Subsequently, at the ordinary meeting of council on the 8th of December 2025, council resolved to again commence the naming process for this unnamed road with the proposed name of Walker Street. During the engagement period, no submissions were received in relation to the proposed name. Naming the road Walker Street provides a clear, appropriate and consistent identifier that aligns with council's naming guidelines, supports community recognition and ensures ease of navigation for residents, emergency services and visitors. It is therefore the officer's recommendation that council, 1, adopts the name Walker Street, which has a historical tie to the area, and 2, forwards a report to Geographic Names Victoria for consideration of the name Walker Street.
Thank you, Ms. Erdity. Council, we've got a recommendation there. Would anyone like to move that? Move Councillor Kerr, second Councillor Toll. Councillor Cleo, do you wish to speak to that? Councillor Toll? Any other councillors? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. 11.2.2, Section 6 and Section 18 delegations to council staff. Ms. Erdity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks council adoption of updated instruments of delegation from the Pyrenees Shire Council to members of council staff. Section 11(1) of the Local Government Act 2020 provides council with the power to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer via instrument of delegation any power, duty or function of a council under the Act other than one prohibited under Section 11(2). A range of other legislation also allows a council to delegate powers, duties and functions under those acts or regulations to council staff. Council uses Maddocks Lawyers Delegation Service to maintain currency of its instruments and compliance obligations knowledge. This service monitors legislative change and provides updates on changes relevant to local government in January and July of each year. The following instruments of delegation were reviewed in February 2025 following the receipt of January updates from Maddocks. S6 Instrument of Delegation, Council to members of council staff, and S18 Instrument of Delegation, Council to members of council staff relevant to the Environment Protection Act 2017. Changes identified in the attached instrument by being marked in red and it's therefore the officer recommendation the council, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 11 of the Local Government Act 2020 and other legislation referenced in the attached instrument, resolves that 1, the members of council staff referenced in the S6 instrument of delegation, council to members of council staff attached, be authorised as set out in the instrument. 2, the members of council staff referenced in the S18 instrument of delegation as attached be authorised as set out in the instrument. 3, the Chief Executive Officer is authorised to sign the instrument on behalf of the council. 4, the instrument comes into force immediately after the instrument is signed by the Chief Executive Officer. And 5, once executed, all former S6 and S18 instruments are revoked.
Thank you, Ms Irving. Council's got a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Field, seconded Councillor Kerr. Would you like to speak on that, Councillor Field?
Yeah, just briefly. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Very happy to move that. I'm just interested to know what training might be provided for staff who have got new or expanded delegations. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. So as part of those changes, we engage with the affected staff to make sure that they're aware of what their new responsibilities or changes in what they do are. And in most cases, they already know that that change is coming and they know what impact that will have to their service.
Thank you, Ms Irving. Any further questions? Councillor? Any other councillors wish to speak on the matter? Okay, we have a recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you. 11.2.3 Volunteer Asset Committee Support. Ms Erdity, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to consider how we continue supporting volunteer committees that manage state-owned community assets that council have historically insured, whilst recognising the initial intent of earlier resolutions to hold the state accountable for state-owned community assets. In making its decision at the May 2025 ordinary meeting of council, it was to ensure that the state government assume responsibility for assets located on Crown land, given their overarching responsibility and control of the asset. One of the other factors that influenced this decision was the lack of control that council had over these properties to enable demonstration to our insurer that the required and appropriate inspections and maintenance were being carried out on the assets. Since the resolution of May 2025, council has engaged with various representatives of the state government over the issue. However, there is currently no commitment given by the state to assume responsibility for insurance coverage of these community assets into the future, and have in fact indicated it would not be something they would be looking to accept. Officers have consulted with councils and the Municipal Association of Victoria to better understand potential pathways forward, including a sector-wide approach to the advocacy. These conversations have resulted in an awareness of a previous motion to the MAV State Council in October 2017. The MAV confirmed the motion was presented to the relevant minister in February 2018 and received the following response. The minister reflected the important role of committees of management and that they reside often on Crown land. They raised DELP's insurance provides coverage for committees of management's public and products liability. However, their policy requires committee of managements to arrange their own insurance for built assets on reserves. This is on the basis that the department do not control the built assets. In considering what options are to ensure that we continue to support the volunteer community committees that manage state government community assets, we need to consider short-term, medium-term and longer-term potential solutions. Some of those options are outlined in the body of the report. Council stands by their decision that the state government should take responsibility for these valuable community assets. However, council also recognises the change in insurance coverage responsibility poses significant financial sustainability challenges and implications to the impacted committees on the basis the following changes to the May 2025 council decisions are suggested. That Council 1 resolves to extend insurance coverage to state government properties that have volunteer committees appointed to include the 26-27 financial year to allow more time to work towards longer term solutions. 2, submit a motion to the MAB State Council as follows. That the MAB advocates to the Victorian Government to take responsibility for the insurance of assets on Crown land for which they have appointed community committees of management, and authorises the Chief Executive Officer to make any changes that may be required to the wording in consultation with the Mayor and the MAV. 3, authorises officers to proceed with other documented proposed options to enable sustainable insurance coverage options for state government properties where there have been community committees of management appointed.
Councillors have got a recommendation there. Someone like to move that? Move, councillor.
Can I add something to it again, please?
So you'd like to move
Another point to that. I'd like to move that we don't take up any insurance until we get written authority from the insurance company and underwriter that we will have cover on these properties.
someone like to second that? No seconder.
Because I would
to be
just have
clear,
a,
it's the first 3 plus that one as a
Plus that
fourth
one was a fourth point.
I would have just want to be reassured of the risk that that may expose us to. In fact, that it may be bringing to the attention, in this very private space, that it may be increasing the risk.
So we've got a motion.
Yeah.
Ask for a seconder.
Have we got a seconder of that motion?
So there's
No.
no seconder, the motion will lapse,
Slaps.
and then you can invite another motion.
So there's no seconder for your motion, so it's lapsed. Is there anyone wants to add an alternative recommendation or motion?
Can, is it possible to sort of building on councillor Toll's motion to perhaps have, as we've got this additional, we're being recommended to extend the coverage for 1 year, that during that additional year period, we do ascertain the likelihood of insurance companies honouring claims, obviously that meet guidelines.
Yeah, so just to be clear, Mr Mayor, in terms of the motion that's been moved by councillor Phelan, is that it includes the first 3 points in the officer's recommendation, with a 4th point that that during the next financial year, that council seeks confirmation from our insurer that we will get written confirmation to reinforce that they will make good claims that are made in the event that council continues to take this insurance on behalf of the committees during the next financial year. That we undertake that one thing.
Yeah, and perhaps, just being clear, asking the insurance agency what documentation is required to ensure we can submit claims.
Before we move on with that, my question would be, wouldn't that something we would want to do prior to spending the money? So my question is, I agree with what you're saying. We don't want to leave the community high and dry, but it's shutting the gate after the horse is bolted. If we've paid the money and then they come back and say, well, we're not going to insure you for these reasons, we've already forked out $76,000. So I think what we need to do is, I think from my perspective, is we need to postpone it and get some further advice before we make a decision on it. Councillor Toll.
So sorry, Mr Mayor, we've got a motion by councillor Phelan, so process requires a seconder to be invited. If there's no seconder, then that motion will lapse.
Yeah.
And then you can.
So we have that motion from councillor Field. Would anyone like to second that?
Yeah, no, but now I'm listening to what you say, I'm like, yeah, that's a bit of a risk.
Not just.
Yeah.
So that motion has lapsed.
Okay.
Councillor.
As I said when I was
Yeah.
putting a motion forward, I can't insure your house, Beck,
Yeah.
until we get clarification from who's ever writing we're giving the cheque to. I'd like clarification. The last thing I want to do is leave our community vulnerable. The last thing I want to do is spend $76,000 on insuring something we can't insure. So let's get some clarification. I'd like to get clarification that we can actually do it before we proceed to spend the 76,000, because we won't get it back.
So my motion is that we defer this decision on this item until we get that further clarification about the likelihood of a payment in lieu of a insurance claim before we pay the premium. That's my motion.
And that we get that information as a matter of urgency.
As a matter of urgency,
Potentially for the next council meeting.
Yes. Someone like to second that? Councillor Toll. Anyone like to speak on that? Councillor Woodley.
Thank you. The big issue is as well that unfortunately our shire has the most natural disasters, and it's shown Avoca, how many times are they going to keep paying for replacements of assets there? Because every time there's a flood, it just gets wiped out. This is the big problem, So we could get to a point where another disaster happens and we're not going to be covered through this. Well, you don't own it, So we really, really do need to get a proper answer. So I support that completely.
I think it's important to understand that the last thing I want to do is let the communities down, and especially those, communities that are remote and their hall and their little things are their world. It's the last thing I want to do. But there's some realities around it, and the council insuring those DECA-owned assets is problematic. And we already know that because of previous things that have occurred and previous claims that have been questioned and even refused. So I think before we fork out 76 grand or whatever the figure is, I think that's roughly the figure, we need to ask them some questions. We know what they're going to ask for about the use, about the maintenance and some other things, to get some clarity before we spend that money, which is ultimately the communities or the ratepayers' money. And if we get the right response, well, then we can make the right decisions. Or we get the responses that we require, then we can make a better informed decision. So, and I'd just like to further go and say, I will be having a meeting, the CEO and myself, on March the 25th next week with Martha Hayward in relation to this very matter about insuring DECA assets. And I note in the body of the report, which is what they said, Ms. Erdity, I'm certainly not questioning anything, but what DECA have said is that, and this is on the basis that the department do not control or build assets. Well, that's really strange, because every time we want to do something, they say they don't control it, but we have to continually get permission from DECA to do works or for attendance, for alternative uses to their facility. So they say they don't control them, but really they do. And my simple solution is, if they don't want the responsibility of the asset, then gift it to the relevant community and get it off their books. If they don't want to manage it and they don't want to have responsibility for it, then get it off their books and gift it to the community. Otherwise, pay the money. It's that simple. Anyone else like to speak on that matter?
Yes,
Councillor Field.
thank you. I agree absolutely, and so we've had this discussion before at council that it's the reason why letters were sent out to the community, perhaps not quite with the nuance that we would have, of the discussions that we had, but we arrived at that point because of these issues that we don't own the assets, we don't hold the records, the maintenance. There's a real lack of clarity around the insurance company's obligations to honour claims which are made, which is why we went down the path that we did. Now we've been told again that DECA's not moving on this. I think it's a really important advocacy piece leading up to the state election. It is one, at the end of the day, for DECA, these are not large amounts of money, but we can't afford, and certainly the communities cannot afford to be finding thousands of dollars to insure assets, you know, with the very limited capacity they have at generating revenue. It's caused huge distress to the community. So I am pleased that letters have been reissued to reassure the community, because it's really been distressing for many committees of management who just don't see a way forward, essentially. So it would be great if we can get clarity on the insurance issue and a way forward that doesn't leave our communities feeling like we've kind of just let them to shoulder this burden. Thank you.
Ms. Erdity, you point of clarification?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to make a point with one challenge with the deferral of this decision tonight is point 2 to submit the motion to the MAV State Council. The timeline for that is actually required by the end of this month, so we won't have another council meeting opportunity to pass that resolution. So just something to think about in making that decision.
Yeah, that's true, but is it a possibility we can call a special meeting if we have to?
Or
That's possible.
Yep.
oh, sorry, I would just say that's a very important note, because we do need to be able to highlight this at a higher level as well and get that other support from other councils that may be in the same situation.
Is it
Well, you could
possible to, Mr Mullen, can we support that second recommendation so that we can proceed with advocacy to MAB whilst we get additional information?
So just a point of clarification, just taking up that suggestion there, councillor Phelan, is that the motion before you has that change made, which defers item 1. So that the motion becomes officer recommendation number 2, officer recommendation number 3, and then a final point that we defer the decision in respect of the payment of the insurance for the 26-27 financial year until we get clarification from our insurer in respect of whether properties will be covered in the event that a claim is made and what documentation is required for that, and that this be done as a matter of urgency.
Yep. Yes, correct.
Yep.
So we've got. Do you want to
So
speak
as long as
further?
the mover is happy with it, you have.
And I'll
Second.
yeah, something that, yes.
Anyone want to speak further on any of those issues? Got a recommendation there, councillors. All those in favour? Thank you. Very good discussion with the community in mind first and foremost, as it should be. 11.2.4, outstanding rates. Ms. Erdity, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report provides an update on the status of the collection of outstanding rates for the 25-26 financial year. It's previously been reported to council that concerns relating to the collection of rates had been below budgeted levels. Each month up until January 2026, the outstanding rates balance had been lower than expected recovery levels. It was stated that whilst there was concern regarding the collection rate, the earliest indication as to whether the collection rate would be a year-end issue would be following the final date that full payment of rates was due, being February 15, 2026. The end of February results has shown a marked improvement in the overall collection pattern for outstanding rates. As at the end of February 2026, the level of outstanding rates was the lowest level since the 2021 financial year. The collection rate should be monitored over the coming months to determine any impact on the 26-27 budget, but on this basis, the officer recommendation is that council requests a further report on the collection rate of outstanding rates and the impact on the 26-27 budget to be tabled at the April 2026 council meeting.
Thank you, Ms Erdely. Council's got a recommendation. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Lynn. Seconded, Councillor Wardlaw. Would you like to speak on that, Councillor Wardlaw? Any councillors wish to speak on that? All those in favour? Thank you. 11.3.1 Victorian Government inquiry into the 2026 summer bushfires. Mr Nolan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to inform Council of the Victorian Government's inquiry into the 2026 summer bushfires across Victoria and to seek Council endorsement for a formal submission to be made to the inquiry. The terms of reference for the inquiry are outlined in this report and they're quite a broad range within the scope for this inquiry. But importantly, it talks about preparation, planning and the capacity to plan for and prepare and respond to this emergency, the resilience of critical services, which is an issue for our council, the impact on community and businesses and agriculture and the efforts to aid in the recovery, the impact on the environment and native wildlife, and a range of other things, including the lessons from the implementation of recommendations from past inquiries. So, Mr Mayor, there's a range of issues that Council has capacity to respond to here. There's 15 sort of dot points there that have listed as items to take up, including just documenting Pyrenees' experience in this event, documenting the impacts on community and infrastructure and the environment, the economy, the context of Pyrenees and Council's capacity as a small rural council to resource and the financial constraints, the cumulative impact on of emergency events over recent years. This is Pyrenees' story here. We've had 6 or 7 major events within the last 10 years, which has a cumulative effect, not only on the community, but on our small organisation and our council, and significant impacts. One of those events, the 2022 flood event, had an impact of around $1 million on council's financial impact. So they're not small issues here that we're dealing with. There's an opportunity to provide feedback around the community programs and the administrative frustrations, and Mr Gowan's presented a report tonight on hazardous trees and the frustrations around interpretation of what might be eligible for funding. There's an opportunity to talk about the Municipal Emergency Recovery Program. This is meant to be the Municipal Emergency Resource Program rather than Recovery Program, so I'll make that correction. And this is a program that funds council to the tune of $60,000 a year to support an officer or part of an officer. It's completely inadequate and additional funding is needed to support rural councils to be in a position to respond and recover in a more timely way. Specific issues identified through council's internal debrief on the matter, environmental factors, and we've heard from the members of the public tonight about the impact of climate change and rainfall causing significant changes in growth patterns in our vegetation, management of hazardous roadside trees, the coordination between local governments, the agency's response as observed by council, community expectations of recovery experiences, insurance observations and recommendations and things that can be done better. So there's a range of opportunities for council to advocate on a lot of matters in respect of this experience. And it is suggested that as this inquiry timeframe has been extended to the 9th of April, there's an opportunity for us to do some more work on this between now and then. And during that process, we would look to seek comment from the relevant staff involved in the emergency and also from councillors, opportunity to have council input. So it is proposed, councillors, that a submission be made, and a recommendation is that council agrees to make a submission to the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry into the 2026 summer bushfires, and that council authorises the Chief Executive Officer to prepare and lodge a submission after consultation with relevant staff and councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillor's got a recommendation here. Would someone like to move that? Move councillor Hill, second councillor Pio. Would you like to speak to that, councillor Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think this is a really good opportunity to be able to highlight some of those challenges which were touched on earlier in the meeting. The financial constraints of some of the funding, the really onerous requirements in some of the guidelines, the cumulative impacts on our shire of the multiple disasters. So a really important opportunity to, I guess, highlight some of the challenges that we're facing here in Pyrenees Shire. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr.
Just a second that, and I think it's very comprehensive, and we don't want to make sure we're missing any, we're not leaving any stone unturned in the event. Again, as the CEO, Mr. Nolan, said, it's becoming something that's becoming so much more prevalent across our shire, and we know that with different farming practices, with different climatic events happening, that we get better and better at doing this, and that we get the support that we need from the people who should be giving us that support. So thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak on that? I think the interesting thing, first of all, is that in relation to the inquiry, submissions can be made by agencies and individuals in the community. So in fact, anyone can make a submission. I invite people to, if they feel they want to, please do so. If the more submissions they get, I think the more opportunity there is to make a change, but anyone can make a submission. I think, again, some of the funding shortfalls highlighted by Mr. Nolan just again shows the disconnect between the government agencies and the front line of disasters. And they're just so far apart, and they just don't connect at all. And there's always significant gaps, and it's particularly in relation to funding. And as we know, things don't happen without the funding. So, and the community suffers, and it puts everyone under unnecessary pressure, I feel. So, all those in favour? Thank you. 11.3.2 request for support Blue Tree project. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Purpose of this report is to consider a request to erect a blue tree in Warborough as part of the Blue Tree project. We have received a request for council's permission and support to erect a blue tree within the Warborough area as part of the Blue Tree project. The Blue Tree project is a charitable organisation dedicated to sparking conversations and encouraging people to speak openly about mental health. Its purpose is to reduce the stigma that is still strongly attached to mental health challenges and to promote connection, awareness and early intervention within communities. There are over 1,400 blue trees located across Australia and in other parts of the world. Each tree serves as a visual reminder and conversation starter, encouraging people to check in with family, friends, loved ones, colleagues, and importantly, themselves. Mr. Keane is the author of the request, and Mr. Keane himself has been directly touched by the stigma of mental health, as have many people in our community. Councillors, there is a recommendation that council provides in principle support for the installation of blue tree, seat and a plaque at the Warborough Recreation Reserve, and undertakes consultation with the Warborough Community Asset Committee on the project.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillor's got a recommendation here, and I'd like to move Councillor Toll, second Councillor Keogh. Councillor Toll, would you wish to speak on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think it'd be a terrific project to do, and I was president of the Warborough Footy Club when we lost 2 players through suicide, and we've lost in that time probably 4 or 5 other locals through suicide. So it's a thing that's really affected our community. The one thing I would suggest is we don't put it at the Warborough recreation reserve. We put it out on the highway. As Mr. Keane mentioned, he was happy with that. Simply because
Need to change the motion.
simply because of when we did have a couple of incidents there, the people from Headspace were fantastic. And they said, oh, what was it? A sporting ground, as a celebration area. It's not something where you go to, it's meant to be a happy place. So fully support it, and we'll be taking it to the community fund for funding on that later this week if it's supported. But do I have to change another motion?
You can make an alteration to the recommendation.
Yes, it's just really about the intent that you've spoken to there is that speaking to council providing in principle support for the installation of a blue tree seat and plaque in Marlborough.
Yes. Yes.
And if the seconder.
We got a second. Have you got a, you happy with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on that matter? I think it's a great idea, and anything that highlights the awareness surrounding mental health is a good thing. And likewise, its presence, if that generates conversations around mental health, it can only be a good thing for the community and perhaps individuals. So it's a really, really worthwhile and important project. So all those in favour? Thank you. 11.3.3 Advocacy Victorian State Election, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to identify and formalise Council's advocacy priorities for the 2026 Victorian State Election, which is to occur on Saturday the 28th of November 2026. Within the body of this report, there are a number of advocacy issues that are identified. The first of which, and the most fundamental, is in respect of Council's financial sustainability. And the report speaks to a long history of activity, advocacy, parliamentary inquiries that have resolved numerous issues in respect of the sustainability of small rural councils in particular. And I go back to 2010 and a report by Mervyn Rowan Whelan titled Local Government Financial Sustainability, which highlighted that at least 18 small rural councils in Victoria were identified as being unsustainable, of which Pyrenees is one. The primary reasons for these councils being at risk were the lack of ability to raise revenue, primary revenue sources being rates, charges, government grants, with fees making up a small percentage of the total revenue. Secondly, the significant asset responsibilities and lack of ability to meet current and future renewal of these assets. And we've spoken tonight just about building assets in one of Mr. Gowans' reports. And the large geographical area with low and dispersed population. And those issues still remain despite 2 parliamentary inquiries. And some of the details about the outcomes of those parliamentary inquiries are things that can be called on when council is advocating in respect of council's financial sustainability. Things that are impacting on council sustainability include the natural disasters which we've spoken to tonight. They include a rate cap environment where council is capped in terms of its ability to raise rates. And in the 2026-27 financial year, the rate cap of 2.75% is below the current CPI and projected inflation levels given current circumstances. So there's a significant risk in 26-27, which will likely exacerbate council's financial challenges. In 2026, council will be entering into a new enterprise agreement, and the process around that further threatens council's financial sustainability. Ministerial guidelines in respect of service rates and charges further diminish council's ability to raise revenue through those charges to offset some elements of our waste program. A number of services that council has relied on the state government to fund in part have not been indexed. Things like library services, where we receive just over $122,000 a year, has not been indexed for a number of years. And of course, the costs to deliver those services continue to grow. Funding provided under the Municipal Emergency Resource Program, which I referred to in a previous report, remains unindexed. Council's bridge audit identified in a previous report to council, identified a number of council bridges, somewhere around 26 of council's 150 bridges have under capacity to meet current heavy vehicle demands. And these bridges require strengthening to enable our agricultural community in particular to be able to get product to and from market. But council's ability to be able to fund the significant costs associated with this asset renewal is way outside of council's capacity. Cost shifting continues to impact through introduced legislation and policy. We've heard in another report around delegations where changes in legislation have necessitated new delegations to be allocated to staff to implement. And the issue around just the training of our staff in terms of that new legislation, let alone the impact on council's resources and capacity, which has been brought about because of the introduced change in legislation. A number of these challenges have been highlighted in the past, and there's a significant opportunity ahead of this state election to continue to beat the drum on this issue and to raise the issue with the relevant parties in the lead up to the state election. It's not necessarily up to council to provide the solutions, but it's certainly up to council to raise the issues with those to be elected. Then there are other critical projects other than council's ongoing financial sustainability, and a number of those are highlighted in this report with some of the specifics associated with each of them and the benefits. And these are not to be taken in any particular order in terms of identifying priority. However, they're all projects, they're all issues that council has raised at some point in time in the past. The North East Pyrenees water supply project is one that council previously resolved to advocate on. I won't speak in any more detail around that, but at this point in time, we require $5 million to do the detailed planning associated with the geotechnical, the detailed design, the native vegetation, cultural heritage and other planning associated with that project to get it shovel ready to be able to apply for the infrastructure. The Beaufort Caravan Park Master Plan, the implementation of the remaining elements of that plan. The Old Beaufort Primary School has been an important project for our community, and council has previously resolved to prioritise this project. And there is an ask of $2.6 million to implement the next stage of the plan beyond what's already been committed by the Victorian government. There's a range of bushfire recovery works from the February 24 Bayndine Rocky Road fire that still require commitment. So continuing to hold the government to account to see that those works are completed. Seeking untied funding for roads and bridges renewal. We talked about the asset renewal challenge, and that continued to be an important focus for council, as it is for other rural councils and not just within our region but across the state. Funding commitment to increase the Shire's emergency water supply points, which during the recent fire event were shown to be inadequate. Power to upgrade small towns. We've heard from the Avoca community recently, who are the Committee of Management for the Rec Reserve at Avoca, that the power supply at the Avoca Rec Reserve is completely inadequate. And we've previously had a study undertaken that demonstrates that. And this is the case in a number of small towns. The Warborough Recreation Reserve, council have recently endorsed a master plan there, and the next stage of implementation of that master plan requires the upgrading of the female change facilities and netball court development, which requires commitment from government to support. Our libraries, the increase in the Victorian government's contribution towards library services to be able to meet communities' expectation around library services. The issues associated with our enterprise agreement are likely to result in the cost of those services being greater than what our revenue is for the next financial year. Presents a challenge. So there's evidence there that additional government support is required there. We've talked about the Municipal Emergency Resourcing Program and the suggestion that that needs to be significantly increased for council to be able to respond and prepare for these emergencies. Further issues around emergency management, which were highlighted in the previous report. And then there is the Emergency Services Volunteer Fund, and council's continuing advocacy in that front to have that fund scrapped. This is by no means an exhaustive list of advocacy, but it just highlights a number of those that have been a challenge and an issue for council. In addition, and in supporting council's own local advocacy on these issues, council is a member of a number of regional and sector-wide bodies. There's the ALGA, which is the Australian Local Government Association, whose primary advocacy is about increasing the direct and untied funding to small councils through the financial assistance program, which is provided for by the Commonwealth Government. The Municipal Association of Victoria has a campaign which actually seeks to support a number of those initiatives that council has identified in this through this report. Rural Councils Victoria have an advocacy program. Tourism Midwest Victoria advocate on improved issues associated with increasing the visitor economy. The Greater Ballarat Alliance of Councils, GBAC, has a limited number of priority advocacy issues, including scrapping the Emergency Services Volunteer Fund, allocating more money for roads and bridges. And the Western Highway Action Committee has an advocacy front in respect to the Western Highway. So, Mr Mayor, there's a lot of opportunity for council to join with those other bodies in advocating and to ensure that our advocacy builds on the advocacy that is provided for by those groups. Mr Mayor, I've probably spoken too long on this issue, and I'm sure councils have got plenty to say about it, but there is an officer recommendation that council endorses the draft Victorian State Election Advocacy Priorities described in this report and advocates strongly over the coming months to ensure attention is drawn to the issues and needs of council and our communities.
Thank you, Mr Noel. Council's got a recommendation there. Anyone like to move that? Councillor Phelan, second to Councillor Todd. Would you like to speak on that, Councillor Phelan?
I would, thank you. Thank you, Mr Nolan. And I know you said that it's not an exhaustive list. I think that some other advocacy opportunities or points were raised during tonight's meeting that we might want to add to this list. I have to say, reading that list, it does feel a bit like death by 1,000 cuts. There's certainly lots of pressures on Pyrenees, and I'm sure very similar for other small rural councils, particularly those who might be in disaster-prone areas. But really, yeah, a really compelling case here to be able to put to state and federal government. And I hope that through the advocacy, there is also a message of the opportunity that shires like Pyrenees can offer. We've got a world-class wine region. We've got stunning natural landscapes, and by supporting some of these, investment priorities, whether it's water, getting potable water into some of our townships, or getting pipelines to support agriculture and further investment, we will be contributing to vastly increased revenue generation and tourism and business growth, and also easing pressure on, Melbourne, on growing cities like Ballarat or the outskirts of Melbourne. And suburbs like Melton, for example. So this is a pretty grim picture, but I think it's important to remember that investment will also bring really significant opportunity, and would be great if that can be reflected through the advocacy. Thank you.
Councillor Toll, do you wish to speak on that?
Of course, we've got to advocate for all three major parties, I suppose, leading up to the election rather than concentrating on one. And it'll be interesting to see what lies we get told and promises get broken, but we can only try our best.
Yeah, Councillor Keogh.
I think just moving on that comment of death by 1,000 cuts, because there is so many things that we do need to be on the ball with, and I think they do need to be listed. I just noticed that the ESVF is going to be a huge one this year, huge, and it's sort of at the end, not that all the others are incredibly important, but I think that is a real hot issue that we advocated so strongly for last year, that if we drop the ball with that one, in light of petrol prices, in light of cost of living, in light of everything, that one will just really cripple our regional community. So that one, I don't know whether to move it further up the line, that's the first one we hit, particularly this year, because when it gets to the end of this next 12 months, that's when the impact is going to be more greatly felt by every single person in our Pyrenees Shire and everyone across regional Victoria. And we need to be the stronger advocates of that, because we know that it's affecting regional areas more than metropolitan municipalities. So we just need to have that as a really high priority. That would be my only ask of this document, that perhaps that just because of the timing this year and the need for that and the impact that that will have on every single person. So do the other ones. I'm not trying to minimise them at all, but just the ESVF will be huge.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any other councillor wishes to speak? Thank you. Certainly, as Mr. Nolan said, this advocacy list isn't exhaustive, and there's so many other issues that we need to advocate strongly on, both collectively and individually, as things may be unique to Pyrenees. So we're best in numbers, as we all know, but there's some things that might be unique to Pyrenees that we just simply got to go out and yell from the rooftops because it's unique to Pyrenees, and we'll certainly do that. We need to seize every available opportunity and also be proactive in making those opportunities. We can't just wait for people to come to us. We need to make those things happen. So we've got to be really, really proactive in that space. And I think that's been highlighted here, not just tonight, but in a lot of discussions we've had. The CEO and myself will be heading to Melbourne Parliament early April and mid-May to directly engage with ministers and advisors. So we've got some work to do to make sure we've got the right pictures that we need to present to those ministers that we can get a sitting with, of course. But we certainly won't be waiting to April to advocate. However, this is our first available opportunity to speak with ministers or advisors face-to-face, and I think you get much more value out of a face-to-face meeting, regardless of who it's with. As Mr. Nolan mentioned, the advocacy pictures will be aligned to the advocacy being undertaken by the MAV or RCV, where possible, and any other bodies that support local government. So again, that's that, strength in numbers. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've just got to support as a group. But if there's anything that's individual we need to support or advocate on, we'll do it. As Councillor Phelan alluded to, I think we need to decide our priorities for advocacy and push those messages really, really strongly. And it doesn't mean we don't push other messages. It just means we need to decide as our council what's our priorities, and we'll really, really hone in on those. And it doesn't mean we forget other things. We can't advocate on every single thing because we just won't be able to, which is unfortunate, but we'll make the most of every opportunity. We don't have to wait. And in fact, I'd just like to highlight that last Friday, we met with the Economic Growth and Better Productivity Commissioner through GBAC, and we actually did some I felt fairly strong advocacy and certainly put some issues across to her plate for consideration and to take up to the minister. So it is happening. It's happening at every opportunity we can, and yeah, but we need to be very strong on it. So the recommendations here, councillors, all those in favour? Thank you. Takes us back to item 12, councillor reports and general business. They might go backwards, you might go councillor Wardlaw, Avoca Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a busy month attending as much as I possibly could. This is just a couple of them, just a bit of a rundown. So in February, I went to the art gallery in Maryborough where a local artist from Avoca, Andy Ferguson, had a display and an opening of his display. And look, just a little bit on Andy, he's just actually incredible. He's in Avoca, and you know, he has done cinematography, he was a cartoonist. He's just done so much stuff. He's worked with the Indigenous up in, where was it? It was somewhere way in the middle of Australia, where he stayed there for quite some time, working on productions with them. And they did a festival that still goes on where these people get the opportunity to bring their own art and their own stories to light through this film festival. So, you know, he's just an amazing man and really deserves some recognition. If you get a chance to go to Maryborough, do go have a look. The exhibition's still going. Then I went to the Tom Curtin Amphitheatre. That was just a fabulous night. There was 580 people attended. There was a lot of concern. It was the day, I think, before the rain, or yeah, and everyone was really quite stressed. Is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? But we managed to literally be driving out just as the showers started, and it was just fabulous. The way it was performed, you know, it's aimed at the kids and community, and that is just, I just love to see community come together and have fun together. You know, we had grandmas and grandpas dancing with, you know, babies in their arms, and I just sort of haven't seen that for a while. So I've just taken my hats off to the amphitheatre community for putting on an event like that and for getting such a good response. It was really fabulous. I also went to the opening, the sod turning of the Early Childhood Centre in Avoca. Martha Haylett was there as well. I'm very proactive for this. I really think it's a wonderful thing. There's opportunity for 12 more jobs in the town, and there'll be adequate childcare within the township. At the moment, we've literally got 4 places. That's all there is. So you've got school teachers in Avoca that are driving to Maryborough to drop their kids at daycare to come back to work in Avoca. And, you know, so just the opportunity to have something like this in town is absolutely fantastic. After that, I went and had a meeting with Martha where we discussed the DECA asset insurance issue we're having, as well as the intersection in Avoca, the main intersection that's quite unsafe by Gollop's garage there. There's probably, 2 vehicles a week turn the wrong way, you know, towing caravans up the wrong way up the road on a regular basis. And I think, you know, it's just something that needs to be worked on and advocated for in the future. And we discussed in length the impact of the fires and in past, you know, just what our little shire has gone through and the struggles we face. So that's just a little rundown, but it's been a good month, and I feel like we're getting heard, and hopefully we can continue that with these meetings in Melbourne with the ministers and things like that. So it's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw. Councillor Phelan, Cameron Ward.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor, and great work, Councillor Wardlaw. And yes, so great to see that early learning centre, the sod turn there, really necessary. So I had all of the regular council meetings and briefings and councillor meetings, a few constituent meetings which were all about the insurance issue. I did find I got accosted at the Avoca market by several people on that issue. The highlight of my community engagement over the Feb period was Barclay Unplugged, the fabulous annual event. Now, I'd like to remind fellow councillors that last year you did say you were going to be on the performance
Next
list.
year.
So
Next year.
next year you're on notice. But the talent at Barclay Unplugged is absolutely amazing. So, you know, from bush poets to incredible singers, musicians, I really highly recommend it. Just, yeah, amazing talent across the Shire, and definitely the highlight of my month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phelan. Thanks for putting our names up to be performers. And perhaps I can brush up and go as a Teletubby. But anyway,
I'll come with
that's
you.
another thing. Yeah. Councillor Toll versus Ben Ward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Once again, Shan, I've been pretty slack and haven't written anything down in my, looks like I've been sitting there doing nothing. Once again, I've had quite a few meetings going on. One in particular that I hadn't been to before was the Sunraysia Highway Committee. Well, guess what? They agreed that it was stuffed and they didn't know how to fix it, and they're going to talk to people. So they're well aware that there's no lines and there's lots of potholes. So you can sleep easy that they know. Warborough Playground progressing well. It's looking really terrific. There's lots of people calling in there and scratching at the fence. They can't get in there to use it yet. Also been down at Lexton a couple of times with the committee down there trying to get water out of the Lexton Reserve to keep that Deaker facility going. Talking about the ESVF, yesterday I was in a situation where we had to get our emergency services out, doing a little burn off at the neighbours, and it got a little bit out of control, and we're very blessed that Langy, Calco, Warborough, Lexton 1 and 2 and Beaufort all turned up to render assistance, so that was good to see the boys. And then we've been doing a fair bit at home for tourism. We've had weddings on the last few weekends, had roughly 600 people through, so I think we're doing our bit for economic development and tourism there. And then last Friday we had the Vintage and Veteran Car Club of Victoria at home with 60 or 70 cars dating back. I think the oldest one was 1909 and the newest one was 1917, so that was pretty cool. But it's just good to see people getting out in the region, and all of the weddings we've had at home are all outsiders, so it's from all over the state. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Toll. Councillor Keogh, and Andrew Ward.
Thank you, and I think it will be a sign of the next few weeks as farmers do burn off, and they do that safely and appropriately and meeting their permit guidelines. So I know that there was a lot of smoke on the weekend, and there will be a lot more coming up. But in light of that too, the last month it's been a lot more one-on-one constituent meetings still as the community continues to recover from the Streatham fire event, but also part of that recovery, 2 events that I attended this month that were very significant from the Beaufort fires, the Eden fires last year, the Amazing Heart Project art exhibition that was held. A huge shout out to all of those people involved, not just for the amazing event that was held here in the hall a few weeks ago, the opening of it, but also the whole process in helping people heal through that. There are a number of people that actually came from Streatham, and I can see our CEO getting a great little memorable artifact that we get to keep from that. But we had people from Streatham come to that event as well, and that was terribly healing for them. But we've also, another event I went to on the other side of the Shire down our way, or a little bit further down, was an incredible event at the Snake Valley Royal Hotel, and it was very well attended. A brilliant event that I was able to co-host with Merv Hughes, although when you co-host with him, you're not really co-hosting. He's definitely a very big character, but he, one point that we really highlighted there was the importance of mental health, and that day was definitely a day not only to raise a lot of funds for the community, and particularly the Caringbellic Rec Reserve. $33,000, I believe, was raised for that, for the recovery effort there. But it was also about people recovering within and through that support through mental health, through emotional support from everyone around them. So 2 incredible events, incredible people running them and incredible people supporting them to support all the incredible people that have been affected by those events. So really lovely month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr. I've had a fairly busy time with meetings and different things, as listed there, but I think some I'll highlight is the Streatham Skipton Fire Community and Business Recovery Network meeting. So that committee meets on a weekly basis, and we have since the fire occurred, which is around about 9 weeks ago now. Time goes pretty quickly. And they've developed a really strong and healthy and relevant plan to move forward to help the community. So that will come out very shortly. I think actually this week it will be released. So it's really good. And I feel that it's Corangamite Shire, Ararat Shire and Pyrenees Shire involved in it, along with community members and relevant agencies. And I do think, compared to perhaps some other things, that committee is quite advanced in that development of that plan. So that's really pleasing. It's probably not so pleasing that I think we would be even further advanced if some of those agencies weren't dragging the chain. But anyway, that's something we've discussed before. The dangerous trees, Rural Councils Victoria attended that networking meeting down in Victoria. One of the advocacy, that was to provide the advocacy to government, both the incumbent government and the other, not the one that's not incumbent. So, but what it did do was provide an opportunity to talk to some people, some key people there. And one of the key speakers was DECA Secretary, and I took the opportunity to bring up about dangerous trees and the DECA insurance, and it was quite an interesting discussion in that didn't want to really know about it. So I thought the responses that I got were quite light on. But anyway, what I'm really highlight is I did take the opportunity to raise those matters, and I'll continue to raise those matters when I get the opportunity. Again, I've already spoke about the Heart Project, the Healing Through Art exhibition that I had the pleasure to open, and Councillor Keogh was there. And I just can't speak highly enough of that event and what was achieved and the work that went into that. But what I would like to do is show the in the token of our appreciation for the Pyrenees Shire's input and assistance, they've provided this absolutely magnificent piece of work, which is a mosaic heart, and it's just fantastic, and it will hang somewhere in a very specific place and obvious place in the council offices somewhere. But I'd just like to show that to the community about what was presented to us on the day for appreciation of our support, and that's a really, really special piece, and we'll make sure it goes in a really, really relevant place. Apart from that, just the normal constituent inquiries regarding rates and planning, which is pretty common, and a range of other matters. So that's about it for me. So thank you all. Thank you for the gallery for sitting through the entire meeting, and I'll now close the meeting at 8:18 p.m. Thank you. Just